Well, we put that back in. Will the Senate please come to order? This morning, our devotional exercises will be conducted by the Reverend Ellen Ravlin of United Methodist Church of Winooski. Welcome.
It's an honor to be here again. I was born in Warren, Vermont, and I'm going to die here in Vermont. I love this state. The home I live in now has been the home of 5 generations where I live, the property in Winooski. So it's such an honor to be able to come and pray for my state that I love, Vermont. So thank you for inviting me again. Thank you, God, for all the men and women who serve our state in leadership roles and for their families. Please provide our leaders with reminders each day of why they dedicated their lives to public service. And I, too, was a public servant for 31 years. And use that commitment to encourage them. Provide these leaders with wise and godly counselors who will provide honest wisdom, honest encouragement, and honest feedback. Well up humility in their hearts to make apologies or adjustments when these things are necessary. Pour out a spirit of cooperation between all elected leaders. Break down the barriers that are built up by selfish ambition for personal power. Give leaders clarity to know what issues are most important to dedicate their time toward. Soften the hearts of your leaders to hear and understand the needs of the communities they serve. Bring a spirit of harmony and righteousness among the staff members who work to support each elected leader. Protect our leaders from falling into temptations of bribes, unfaithfulness, or straying from what they know is right. Protect them from the plots of evil to stand for what you have established. We pray that they will not lead selfishly for personal ambition or vain conceit. Draw them close to yourself, your wisdom, your ways, through your grace, and lead them in making the right decisions that align with what you would like to accomplish. Create a desire within our leaders to be pleasing to you, and use our leaders to help bless and prosper our state. May our leaders seek your guidance in all that they do and protect them from any enemies. May they stand for what is right, girded by your truth, and committed to making the world a better place, a place where government leaders represent all citizens equally. And amen.
Are there any announcements? We have Senate bills for introduction, right? Okay, we have S18, S53, S122, and S123. All Senate bills being on the calendar for notice and carrying an appropriation under Rule 31, and they're all referred to the Committee on Appropriations. Now we have Senate bills for introduction. We have S128, an act relating to eliminating certain exemptions from the minimum wage and overtime, including the tipped minimum wage, increasing the minimum wage, and requiring that inmates receive the minimum wage for work performance, introduced by Senator Biehoski. Please listen to the first reading.
S128, an act relating to eliminating certain exemptions from the minimum wage and overtime, including the tipped minimum wage, increasing the minimum wage, and requiring that inmates receive the minimum wage for work performed.
Let's see. Now you've heard the first reading of the bill, and it is referred to the Committee on Economic Development. We now have House bills for referral. H1, an act relating to accepting and referring complaints by the State Ethics Commission. It passed the House on March 13th, 2025. Please listen to the first reading.
H1, an act relating to accepting and referring complaints by the State Ethics Commission.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill, and it is referred to the Committee on Government Operations. We have H 206, an act relating to the Uniform Commercial Code. It passed the House on March 13th, 2025. Please listen to the first reading.
H206, an act relating to the Uniform Commercial Code.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill, and it is referred to the Committee on Finance. We have H238, an act related to the phase out of consumer products containing added, a long word that begins with P, chlorofluoroalkylates and PFOAs and substances. And that passed the House March 13th, 2025. Please listen to the first reading.
H238, an act relating to the phase-out of consumer products containing added perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill, and it's referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare. H458, an act related to the Agency of Digital Services. It passed the House on March 13th, 2025. Please listen to the first reading.
H458, an act relating to the Agency of Digital Services.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill, and it is referred to the Committee on Institutions. Orders of the day. We have S59, an act related to amendments to Vermont's open meeting law. It was introduced on February 1st, 2025. It was referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as it appears on page 230 of today's calendar, and then when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S59, an act relating to amendments to Vermont's open meeting law.
I recognize the senator from Orange District, Senator Hart, for the report of the Committee on Government Operations.
President, I have the report for S59 that was introduced by Senator Hardy. We had witnesses testify in front of the Government Operations. Tucker Anderson from Legislative Council, Office of the Legislative Council. Maureen Collins, Executive Director from Vermont Housing Finance Agency. Senator Ruth Hardy as a sponsor. Senator Wendy Harrison, sponsor from Wyndham District. Cassie Pohl-Hemans, the Chief Executive Officer from the Vermont Economic Development Authority. John Potter, Town Manager from Brattleboro. Samantha Sheenan, Municipal Policy and Advocacy Specialist from Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns. The section by section reading for this bill. Section 1 amends 1 VSA 310. This section amends the definition of undue burden to better match the definition with the same term used in federal law, such as Americans with Disabilities Act. The amendments clarify that a factor to be considered in the context of an undue burden is the availability of necessary personnel and staff instead of insufficient personnel and staff. Undue burden is used in the context of a system for requesting accommodations for members of the public to attend a meeting of a public body, either virtually or in person. When a member of the public makes a request for accommodation, the public body may assert that the request presents an undue burden and may deny the request accommodation. Section 2 amends 1 1 VSA 312. This section amends various components of the procedures governing meetings held under Vermont open meeting law. First, this section adds a new subdivision, A3B, to exempt site inspections and field visits from a hybrid meeting requirement that is applicable to public bodies of the state. Second, this section amends subdivision A6A to remove references to the approval of official minutes, meeting minutes. These are conforming amendments to match the procedure laid out for minutes, which does not require either an approval of the minutes by the public body or the posting of official minutes. This subdivision, 6A, governs the timeline for posting recording of an electronic meeting. The amendment is intended to clarify that the timeline for posting shall immediately follow the posting of minutes under current law, which is within 5 calendar days of the meeting. Third, this section adds a new subdivision, D3, to require public bodies to post meetings agenda that include sufficient details concerning the matter to be discussed in the meeting. Further, this subdivision is amended to require a specific term to be used in a meeting agenda when there is a proposed executive session. Section 3 amends 1 VSA 313. This section amends the statute governing executive sessions to add a new procedure for closing executive sessions and to add a new basis for a motion to enter executive session. First, this section amends the procedure governing executive sessions to require that the public body to move to close an executive session in the same manner that a public body is required to vote to enter an executive session. Second, this section amends the basis for entering an executive session to add a new basis for closing executive sessions to discuss information concerning the interest rates of public finance loans. Section 4 sets the effective date as on passage. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to follow up with from the report from the Senator from Orange with a little bit of context for the body. For those of us who were here last year, you might recall that we passed a major update to our open meeting law, basically post-COVID, including a lot of provisions that we sort of learned from working remotely. And this bill was introduced to clean up some of the language from that major overhaul. Every time we do a big bill in here, there are oftentimes things that need to be cleaned up the next session that either were left hanging or we couldn't get to. For those of you who might remember last session at the end, things were a little rushed. We got a bill back from the House. A couple of the things they didn't quite make sense. So this bill, we cleaned some of that language up and also amend some things that we got some feedback from about how the new law was working, such as the executive session to discuss interest rates. That was a request from VITA that discusses interest rates, things like being able to do field visits without hybrid meeting, things like that. So it's mostly a cleanup bill to make sure that our open meeting law is working as intended with our major bill last session. So I thank the Chair of Government Operations and the committee for their unanimous vote on this bill and moving it forward so we can make sure that our statutes are in good shape. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I might ask a question of the presenter.
The presenter is interrogated.
My questions are on page 232 of the calendar. So the first question was about subsection 3 there at the top of the page. It says a meeting agenda shall contain sufficient details. And I'm just wondering in whose eye that would be. That is, who determines what is sufficient?
Probably would be the select board in a municipality. On a state level, it would be somebody in a committee, or that would be my feeling. As a past chairman of select boards for 9 years,
Yeah.
we would make a motion to go into executive session and then come with the intent of telling the body, the people who were there or who were on Zoom or whoever, or through the OWL or whoever was watching us, we would make a motion to go in to discuss finance, to discuss personnel, to discuss something, and then we'd be making a motion to come out of executive session and then inform the public at that point. So that's how I felt.
I thank the senator. I guess what I mean is, it says the agenda shall contain sufficient details about the subject matters to be discussed.
Correct.
And my question is rather, is your answer that it would be each individual body would determine what was sufficient? Or is there a standard kind of that we're looking at?
That would be something, again, from my past experience, that I would be very vocal on coming out of executive session and telling the body about what we discussed.
Well-
And that would be that with that. As far as the terminology, I didn't write the terminology of this bill. That was done by Senator Hardy. No, it wasn't? Okay, legislative council did it then. So I really, can I read that myself right now so I can ignore a definition? Meeting agenda shows.
Mr. President, could we take a recess?
Yes, Senator Lyons, you're supposed to stand up when you ask that. But yes, we will take a brief recess so that the senator can check with legal counsel. The interrogation can continue.
And I would thank the senator for his answers. Mr. President, I thank the senator for the answer about sufficient detail. Ledge Counsel assures me that going forward, if people have a problem in a specific instance, this will arm them for a little bit more detail in a potential court case. But I do have a concern about the next sentence in subsection 3. For any meeting that may include an executive session, the meeting agenda shall state that the meeting includes a proposed executive session. Ledge Counsel tells me that does open a little ambiguity from where we are now. So as it stands now, you can call for an executive session in the middle of a meeting, even if you didn't warn it on the agenda. I believe under this language, it might constrain that to the point where if you hadn't warned it, you wouldn't be able to go into executive session. So the committee chair, Senator Collmore, has assured me that the committee will take a look at that and potentially make a change for third reading, or at least assure us that a change isn't needed. So thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of S59. We now have third reading of S45, an act related to protection from nuisance suits for agricultural activities. Are there any amendments before third reading? Please listen to the third reading.
S45, an act relating to protection from nuisance suits for agricultural activities.
And the question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? Oh, Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire of the presenter of the bill?
Which senator?
The presenter, which I think is...
The
Senator
presenter
Frank.
of the bill shall be interrogated.
Well, let me just get it ready.
Yeah. So, and further look at, after second reading, there was a part that was struck of the prior protections against nuisance lawsuits that I just wanted clarification of why the committee took that section out. And this is, the bill is introduced on page 4, the agricultural activities protection from nuisance lawsuits. In there before it was that it required that the action was conducted in conformity with federal, state, and local laws and regulations. And so that was stricken. So I was just wondering why we would not want to make sure that the farming practice that we're talking about doesn't conform to federal, state, and local laws and regulations. It seemed like something that we would want it to follow. You know, but just wondering if you could give any explanation of why that requirement was struck.
I'm sorry, what page was that, Mr. President?
I'm looking at the bill as introduced. Yeah, that I think the same one. Page 4, lines 19 and 20.
I don't have an answer for that right now, Mr. President. If you'd like to today, I can certainly supply that today's third reading. My bad.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't ask it yesterday, but in reading
That
through
would've been
this,
nice.
I wondered why that.
If I might, Mr. President, can I yield to the chair from Judiciary?
The senator yields to the chair of Judiciary.
Thank you. So to this question, I think if you look at lines 11 through 13, I can understand why it may seem vague. I would agree with that, but I think that there is a presumption that practices conducted in a manner consistent with proper and accepted customs and standards followed by similar operators of agricultural activities in the state would infer that those practices are in conformity with federal, state, and local laws and regulations. But as it's written in lines 19 through 20, it's vague as to what those actual laws are. But we do get more specific in lines 7 through 10.
State.
And I hope that provides some clarity.
Okay, so we have the state laws, and then C is basically saying it's an accepted custom and standard practice. It wouldn't be a custom standard practice if it was illegal, is basically.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed S45. We now have S66, an act related to motor vehicle noise, exhaust modifications, and engine compression brakes. Are there any amendments prior to third reading? Senator from Windsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clarify 2 points. If that's not the appropriate time, I can sit down now.
It's not the appropriate
I'm gonna
time,
sit down.
Senator. This is the appropriate time for amendments. Are there any amendments? Please listen to the third reading.
S66, an act relating to motor vehicle noise, exhaust modifications, and engine compression brakes.
Now would be the appropriate time, Senator from Windsor.
I wanted to clarify 2 points that I misspoke yesterday in response to questions. The first is to the senator from Chittenden, who she had asked me about primary offenses for safety violations, and I misunderstood the question and apologize. The bill does not change anything to do with primary offenses on a vehicle. That basically means what can you be pulled over for that's wrong with your vehicle by a police officer, as just a getting pulled over versus if you are already pulled over, a secondary offense is something that could be later on if it's noticed on your vehicle. It is a safety violation if you have a dragging muffler currently. So we are not changing that, nor are we making it a secondary offense in this bill. So wanted to just clarify that. Nothing changed in the bill. The second was I was asked about the definition of motor vehicles by another senator from Chittenden County. And to clarify, within state statute, a motor vehicle can be defined as a motorcycle. So motor vehicle, motorcycle. And we did separate it in the first section differently than the later sections because there are different federal standards for motorcycles versus motor vehicles like a pleasure car. So that's why it's separated in that first section. So I appreciate that, and I'll just conclude by noting that this is a great opportunity to thank Legislative Council. This is we have a legislative counselor who is new to transportation but not new to the building, and I am thrilled that this was the first bill that we were able to work on that we brought to the Senate floor. So thank you to our Legislative Council.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall S66 pass? If so, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have passed S66. We now have S87, an act related to extradition procedures. Are there any amendments to be offered before third reading? Please listen to third reading.
S87, an act relating to extradition procedures.
Now, you've heard the third reading, and the question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have passed S87. We are skipping over for now. Excuse me, Senator from Chittenden.
We no longer have a need to pass over this.
Okay. Then we will take up SR 10. We have a committee resolution for second reading. We have on the calendar SR 10. a Senate resolution relating to the disapproval of Executive Order 0125, introduced to the Committee on Government Operations. Please listen to the second reading of the resolution.
SR 10, Senate Resolution relating to disapproval of Executive Order 01-25.
I recognize the senator from Chittenden, Senator Vihovsky, for the explanation of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first thing I want to say about this resolution is that it is not necessarily a disagreement with the creation of the Agency of Public Safety. In fact, within the resolution, we state our commitment to working on legislation to do just that. What this resolution is a disagreement that governmental restructuring should be done by executive order without the full process of our legislative bodies. And so I want to just again be clear, while this is a disapproval of the executive order creating the Agency of Public Safety, it is not a disapproval of the Agency of Public Safety. And so I'm not going to read you every word of the resolution, but what the resolution would do is make it so Executive Order, I believe it was Executive Order 1, does not go into effect on April 15th, creating the Agency of Public Safety. And we have a bill either in drafting or possibly even in our committee already for our Government Operations Committee in the Senate to begin the process of creating the Agency of Public Safety with the due diligence of our legislative bodies. And so that is what this resolution does. And we ask for the body's support. The vote in committee, if I remember correctly, was 3-2. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the resolution be read a third time? If so, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. And you have ordered third. Am I in the right place here? You've ordered third reading of SR 10. We now have S23, an act related to the use of synthetic media in elections, introduced on January 22nd, 2025, and referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as it appears on page 233 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S23, an act relating to the use of synthetic media in elections.
Recognize the senator from Rutland District, Senator Collmore, for the report of the Committee on Government Operations.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would invite folks to follow along on page 233 of today's calendar. This is a strike all amendment. S23 would require a person, when publishing or distributing media that has been manipulated using digital technology intending to injure the reputation of a political candidate or influence the outcome of an election, to include a specific disclosure in the media. Section 2031 defines two terms that we've used throughout the bill. Quote, deceptive and fraudulent synthetic media, end quote, is defined as media creating a representation of an individual with the intent to injure the reputation of a candidate, to influence the outcome of an election, or otherwise deceive a voter in a manner that appears to a reasonable person to be an authentic recording of an individual saying or doing something that did not occur, or to deceive in a manner that provides a reasonable person with a fundamentally different understanding of the speech or conduct compared to an unaltered and original version of the media. Synthetic media is defined as an image, audio recording, or a video of an individual's appearance, speech, or conduct that has been created or intentionally manipulated with the use of digital technology, including artificial intelligence, in a manner that creates a false but realistic representation of the candidate. The next section, 2032, sets forth a disclosure requirement when publishing a synthetic media message within 90 days of an election. A disclosure is required when a person publishes or distributes synthetic media about a candidate that he or she should have known was deceptive and fraudulent within 90 days of when that candidate will appear on the ballot for an election. The disclosure must read, quote, "This media has been created or intentionally manipulated by digital technology or artificial intelligence," end quote. If the media is an image or video, the disclosure must be in a size that is easily readable by the average viewer. For audio recordings, the disclosure must be read in a pitch and pace that can easily be heard by the average listener. Next, the bill does provide a few exemptions to the bill. Radio, television broadcasting stations, websites, streaming platforms, and mobile apps that broadcast deceptive and fraudulent synthetic media are exempt from the bill's requirements if they acknowledge through their own disclosures that there are questions about the authenticity of the media they're paid to broadcast, or they are required by federal law to broadcast the ads. A website, newspaper, or magazine is also exempt if the publication clearly states that the deceptive and fraudulent synthetic media does not accurately represent the speech or the conduct of the person or represented individual. A person that produces a synthetic media constituting parody is also exempt from the bill, as are cell phone companies, internet service providers, and websites that allow users to post content on its site. Section 2033 sets forth penalties for violations of the bill. A person is fined not more than $1,000 for an intentional violation unless it's done knowingly and intentionally with intent to cause violence or bodily harm, in which case the maximum fine is $5,000. The fines go up higher for repeat offenders. A candidate who's harmed by deceptive and fraudulent synthetic media can request the court place an injunction on the publication of such media. Finally, Section 2041 of the bill adds the ability of the state's attorney or attorney general to institute an appropriate action for violations of this chapter, which is the chapter under which the bill is categorized. The bill would take effect on passage. And we heard from a list of folks on this bill. The organizing manager of Democracy Team from Public Citizen, the executive director of the Vermont Public Interest Research Group, the Secretary of State and Deputy Secretary of State, the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the Attorney General's Office, the Executive Director of Massachusetts and Northeast TechNet, the original sponsor, the senior senator from Addison, Deputy Secretary of State, Executive Director of Vermont Association of Broadcasters, our own legislative counsel, Director of Elections and Campaign Finance, partner and president of government relations for Leonine Public Affairs, a doctoral candidate from the University of Vermont, and finally a New England Connectivity and Telecommunications Association. Committee vote was 5-0-0, and we ask the body for its full support. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations? Senator from Chittenden.
May I please interrogate the reporter?
The presenter is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm wondering if the committee at all considered just an outright ban on this kind of thing.
Thank you, Mr. President. That is an excellent question. I will point out the committee spent a good 6 or 7 weeks on this bill. Even though it's a fairly short bill, we did take great testimony, I thought, from people on all sides of the issue. We will become the 21st state in the country to at least have some disclosure requirement. There have been 2 states, to our knowledge, California and Minnesota, that have outright banned this. We were cautioned by our legislative counsel that the likelihood of objections for First Amendment freedom of speech rights would increase had we chosen to go the banning route. We had advice from the Secretary of State's office as well. They did not think it was a good idea to ban it, but rather favored the more narrow or moderate version of what we came up with, I believe.
I thank the reporter of the bill.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by saying that I'm grateful this bill is being brought forward. I support its intent, and I'd like to ask to interrogate the reporter of the bill, please.
Senator from Chittenden, please project a little
Okay.
better when
I
you
usually
ask,
never
when you
refuse
ask
to
me a
be
question.
Quiet.
Yes.
Okay. May I interrogate the reporter of the
The
bill?
senator from Rutland is interrogated.
Mr. President, I'm on page 234 of the calendar, looking at subsection A of section 2032. And I did not hear enough in the report of the senator to understand why this is limited to only content related to a candidate that is appearing on the ballot in that election. Would this then not apply to propositions in a municipality or school budgets or other votes where individuals might be impugned using manipulated synthetic media?
I thank the senator for the question, Mr. President. I think if you go back to section 2031, it does define two terms throughout the bill. One of the intents, at least, was to include not just a misrepresentation of a political candidate, but also the use of AI to influence the outcome of an election, which technically could include propositions, I believe, or to include a specific disclosure in that media. So certainly the intent was there.
Mr. President, I saw that line and very much appreciated the broad capture of deception of a voter there. I just read through the bill and didn't see where that matched the context on the ballot in which someone could be considered in violation without a disclosure. So I suppose I would ask the senator if he would be open to a friendly amendment so it would not have to be an election solely where the candidate in question is on the ballot, but things like school budgets and propositions, and just any vote is taken within 90 days of synthetic media being used to misrepresent individuals involved in that decision.
Mr. President, I think that is an excellent suggestion, and we certainly will entertain that.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I thank the member.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden.
May I interrogate the reporter?
The reporter is interrogated.
This is probably a question that you can answer, I hope. But there are two places here where you talk about the average listener and then the average listener or viewer. What discussion, if any, did you have, or is there a definition of the average listener or viewer?
Well, Mr. President, I think there's also the use of the word reasonable in more than one instance in the bill. And I would suggest that an average listener or viewer would be able to have a reasonable outlook on things. We did not specifically take testimony on what the word average meant. The other thing I'll just mention is that if it's a television ad, so it's a visual plus an audio piece or just a radio ad, average listener might not necessarily be paying excellent attention to that, depending on how many other ads they were listening to. But we think that, again, there should be a disclosure included.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. This is one of those gray areas that we all deal with from time to time, but I thank you for your answer.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And we have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Government Operations. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And you have ordered third reading of S-23. You now have S-27, an act relating to medical debt relief and excluding medical debt from credit reports. It was introduced on January 24th, 2025, and it was referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth in the calendar for today on page 236, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S27, an act relating to medical debt relief and excluding medical debt from credit reports.
Recognize the senator from Washington County, Senator Cummings, for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I speak to the bill and the amendment?
You may.
This bill is one I think most of the body has heard about. It's had press releases and media coverage. It's a proposal that has come from the Treasurer's Office to help people that are saddled with medical debt. Medical debt is the prime cause of bankruptcy in this country. People find themselves weighed down with this. It can ruin your credit reference. And for many people, it's a shame to be in debt, to not be able to cover their bills. But when you're sick, and it really isn't a choice to go into medical debt. So what this bill allows is appropriates $1 million to the treasurer. With that money, the treasurer can contract with a nonprofit. And there are nonprofits that this is what they do. They will buy down, and the estimate is for $1 million investment, we can buy down about $10 million in medical debt for people in Vermont. This is limited in several ways. The household income has to be at or below 400% of the federal poverty level, or owes a medical debt in an amount that is 5% or more of the debtor's household income, and the debtor-patient account still has an outstanding balance even after the healthcare provider has completed its routine efforts to collect the amount due. So this has to have gone through all the usual processes that generally it's a hospital, sometimes it is an individual practitioner, what they would normally do in this state to collect the debt. Okay, the section 2 states that the money for this will be appropriated from a $20 million appropriation that was given to the treasurer last year, the year before. That money was appropriated to buy down bonded indebtedness to the state. The treasurer has testified that he found out he was making more money than he would have saved just on interest on that money. And so he chose at that time, this time, not to buy down that debt because it was more financially beneficial to the state not to. So that money is still sitting there. This would take $1 million from that, and I'm sure the Appropriations Committee will have something to say about it. This, in section 3, will change. Section 3 is where the amendment is. And the banking and financial services community came to us with a concern because when we go on to section 4, we prohibit medical debt from being included in your credit report. Because unlike I went out and bought a new wardrobe, this is not a debt you necessarily choose to make. It's not discretionary spending. You either spend it or you die in many cases. So we prohibit that. The banking and financial people came to us and said, now wait a second. if you put that on your credit card, and you put the wardrobe on your credit card, how do we know what's been paid off? Was that $200 a month you've been paying off for the last 5 years? Is that paying off your medical debt, or is that paying off your new wardrobe or your new whatever? And the same with if you take out a line of credit or a home equity loan, the bank doesn't know what you're spending that money on. You are securing that loan with they don't ask you where it's going. So their concern was you could come in and say, well, I took out that loan and I'm not going to pay it. You're going to get $1 million, you're going to get a penny on the dollar for that debt. So we did those exclusions. So Section 3, we have a new Section 3, which prohibits a credit reporting agency from reporting or maintaining a consumer file information relating to medical debt. And as amended, medical debt excludes debt arising from veterinary services. Sorry, we don't love your dog. Where are we? Veterinary services, debt charged to a credit card, except for a credit card issued solely to pay off medical care services. So if you take out a limited credit card that's only used for medical debt, and that can be demonstrated, then that counts. But general credit cards in which you put everything don't. Debt charged to a home equity or general purpose line of credit and secured debt. So those are excluded from things that can be paid off. They just can't differentiate what's medical debt and what's just discretionary debt. Section 4 and 5 put an exception to the prohibition on accepting a credit report without the consumer's consent. This would allow the nonprofit, this would consent for a nonprofit organization that requests the report to determine the eligibility for the abolition of medical debt. So they can look at your credit report and see if you've got $10,000 worth of medical debt sitting on there. It prohibits, in Section 6, exception to the prohibition on a large healthcare facility selling its medical debt to allow for the sale or transfer of medical debt to a nonprofit entity that will abolish the medical debt. So right now, your major hospital can't sell your debt to a collection agency. This says, with the exception that you can sell it to this nonprofit. So you can, if they offer you $1,000 for $10,000 worth of debt, you are allowed to make that transaction. And prohibits a large healthcare facility and medical debt collectors from reporting medical debt to a credit reporting agency. So this act takes effect on July 1st, 2025. This, we hope, for a very reasonable, minuscule, given some of the appropriations we make around here, could buy a lot of peace of mind for a lot of Vermonters. And so the vote was, yes, I'm in health and welfare now. So it was 5-0-0. And we asked that this body concur.
I recognize the senator from Chittenden, Senator Lyons, for the report on the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. President. We listened to the proposal before us, and we heard from the treasurer regarding the $20 million that was not used to buy down the bonds. And your Senate Appropriations Committee agreed that the $1 million is appropriate to use to buy down approximately $100 million worth of debt, and voted 7-0-0 to advance the bill as proposed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Addison.
Mr. President, may I inquire of the reporter of the appropriations report?
The reporter is interrogated.
I believe that you are the appropriate person to ask this question. The $20 million that now is $19 million because $1 million of it would be used for this purpose. I seem to recall that $20 million, I think it's the same $20 million, came up in the context of the BAA and was used for some things in the BAA. And I just want to understand if that's correct. And so what is the status? Is it now, I mean, I know the BAA is still up in the air, but assuming that it was used for that purpose, what is the status of this 20, now $19 million?
So given the condition of the BAA and the $20 million, you're accurate in identifying a concern that the Appropriations Committee has, regardless of where the 20 million as the treasurer's money is. The Appropriations Committee does agree that the $1 million will be utilized for this purpose. The final resolution as to from where it comes will be a decision within the Appropriations Committee, whether it's during BAA or the big bill.
Okay, so the language in this bill may be impacted by whatever happens to the BAA or the big bill. So that $20 million will presumably be used for multiple purposes beyond this, but the $1 million will be reserved for this, if this bill passes.
That's exactly accurate. And so in reporting my section of my report from the appropriations, that is all information that is hanging behind us and going before us, and we will have to take it into consideration, but that's accurate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I interrogate the first
Reporter from Health and Welfare?
Yes, please.
The reporter from Health and Welfare is interrogated.
Yes, Mr. President. Said that the treasurer will contract with the nonprofits to pay up. Does the nonprofits charge a fee when they do this?
I'm sure they do. But there are several, the treasurer will be able to negotiate and find the best deal. And, you know, as a nonprofit, it covers their costs to do this. So I'm sure that the treasurer, who minds our money very closely, will be doing that negotiating and get the best deal he can.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not actually sure which reporter is the right person to ask my question, but it's a money question, so maybe I'll start with the reporter of the
The senator
appropriations.
from Chittenden on appropriations will be interrogated.
Thank you. So my question is if any testimony was taken about the value of using taxpayer money to buy down debt in a medical system that is struggling in many ways and harming people versus simply making that debt uncollectible.
Mr. President, we didn't take direct testimony as you're asking it. I'd ask you if you could please repeat your question.
So my question is about whether or not testimony was taken, and like I said, it may have been in the other committee, about whether or not it is a good use of taxpayer money to buy down debt that is propping up a system that is actively doing harm.
Mr. President, that's probably a good question for Health and Welfare. Okay. However, I will say that from the appropriations perspective, I think there's an underlying support of values that help people get out from under unexpected large debt so that they can move forward with their lives. But I will allow for Health and Welfare to respond to that question.
Thank you. It seems I got the wrong one.
Would the senator from Health and Welfare be interrogated?
Thank you, Mr. President. As I understand the question, you're asking, did we take testimony on whether or not it was best use of taxpayer dollars to pay down debt, which is helping prop up what some people feel is a system that does harm. I think the short answer to that is no. It was beyond the scope of this bill. We were dealing with the present reality, which is this is the system we have. The people that have this debt have had it for some time, and the active harm that's being done to them, we felt outweighed any philosophical considerations going forward.
I thank the presenter, and I appreciate this bill, and as someone who has dealt with medical debt myself, know the harm that can be done. And I will be voting yes, but it seems to me that in some ways the way we challenge systems is by not paying for them, and that there would have been a way of not charging interest, not allowing credit reporting or wage garnishment that would have made this debt uncollectible, thus reducing the harm on the individuals who hold it without further funding the system that is creating this debt. And so, again, I will be voting yes, as it is a step in the right direction. I hope we can have further discussion about eliminating the very prospect of medical debt in our barbaric for-profit healthcare system.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may interrogate the reporter from the Health and Welfare Committee.
The reporter from Health and Welfare is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just wondering if it was considered in the Health and Welfare Committee if there was any distinction in debt incurred from non-discretionary medical procedures, which would be a surgery or a response to disease or that kind of thing, from discretionary medical procedures such as cosmetic surgeries?
Mr. President, there was not that we didn't get into. I don't know if the nonprofit does that, but no, we didn't.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Thank the reporter.
Senator Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. As part of the negotiation between the treasurer and Undue Medical Debt, which is the nonprofit that will probably be looking to contract regarding this, they are very much experienced in looking at the type of costs and the type of procedures that would result in medical debt to be relieved. And the other piece of it is, of course, the economic conditions, the income of the individual and the cost of the debt with respect to income. So the answer is that this will be very much a part of the contract negotiation going forward.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And we have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare. Now the question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? Is that not the question? The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of S27. We now have S51, an act related to Vermont unpaid caregiver tax credit. It was introduced on February 1st, 2025, and was referred to the Committee on Finance, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as appears on pages 237 of today's calendar, and then when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S51, an act relating to the Vermont unpaid caregiver tax credit.
I recognize the senator from Addison District, Senator Hardy, for the report on the Committee of Finance.
Mr. President. So 3 years ago, I sat in the living room of Pamela, a constituent of mine in her late 50s who had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Her daughter Erin was her primary caregiver, and she joined us for the conversation. They invited me over to talk about how much time, energy, and support it takes to be someone and to care for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia. What I recall most about that conversation, though, was Pamela's strength and determination and Erin's patience and dedication. Erin is the single mother of a young son, and in order to have sufficient time to care for her mother and her young son, to take her mother to appointments, to help her prepare meals, and to manage her finances, Erin has had to give up her full-time job because of the dual role of caring for a child and caring for a senior citizen. Has taken so much time and energy. As a result, the burden of unpaid family caregiving makes it hard for Erin to make ends meet. It turns out, Mr. President, that Pamela and Erin's story is not unique. In Vermont, over 70,000 people are unpaid caregivers. While many of these people care for others for just a few hours per week, or as a way to help out a neighbor or assist a friend recovering from surgery, thousands of Vermonters are regular caregivers for spouses, parents, adult children, and other relatives who are struggling with disabilities, chronic diseases, and end-of-life needs. Nationwide, and likely in Vermont as well, most unpaid caregivers are women over the age of 55. Nearly the same demographic group that is most likely to be living in poverty. This is no coincidence because unpaid caregiving, whether for a young child, an aging parent, or an ailing spouse, leads to time out of the paid workforce. This time away from paid employment means foregone wages, benefits, and retirement contributions, making it difficult for caregivers to earn a living or save for retirement. Further, unpaid caregiving can often lead to burnout, delayed medical care, and health issues for the caregiver themselves. At the same time, these caregivers are providing a valuable service not only to the family member, but extending and improving their life, but also to society. Caregiving at home can reduce injuries and medical costs and prevent expensive nursing home care, which can cost well over $100,000 per year, often paid for by public funds. While S51 is not meant to fully compensate unpaid caregivers, it would provide a refundable tax credit to unpaid caregivers to acknowledge their important work and help put money in their pocket. Structured like the child tax credit created 3 years ago, the unpaid caregiver tax credit would provide a $1,000 refundable tax credit for eligible caregivers who earn up to $125,000 annually. For those earning more, the credit would be reduced by $20 per $1,000 more earned up to an income of $175,000 annually. The credit could be prorated for part-time residents and part-time caregivers based on the number of months care is provided. Since it's refundable, people would get the money even if they don't they don't usually earn enough to file taxes. It's very similar to the child tax credit. To qualify, people would have to be caring for someone for more than 20 hours per week who is related by blood, marriage, or adoption, needs assistance with daily activities of living, has a medically diagnosed or health condition, a medically diagnosed disability or health condition, and does not live in a residential care facility. Caregivers would have to attest that they meet these requirements and provide supporting documentation to the tax department upon request. Such documentation would include a form signed by a medical professional stating that the person being cared for has a diagnosis that requires assistance with activities of daily living, or ADLs, for more than 20 hours per week. Looking at the bill, which you can find on page 237 of today's calendar, Section 1 outlines findings which basically make the case for financial support for unpaid caregivers. And I want to just call out one of them in paragraph 2A, which is more than 75% of family caregivers ages 50 years of age and older who retired early because of family caregiving responsibilities would have remained in the workforce longer if they had had access to financial or non-financial supports, meaning that people retire early to care for others, foregoing the income that they would have earned. Section 2 of the bill is the statutory purpose, which is required for all tax credits. And the statutory purpose for this is to provide financial support to Vermonters who spend significant time providing uncompensated care for a family member. Section 3 lays out the requirements for eligibility for the tax credit, as I described previously, for both the person providing care and the person receiving care. And Section 4 is the effective date. The credit would take effect retroactively to January 1st of this year, meaning that taxpayers could claim the credit when they filed their taxes in April of 2026. Unlike recent legislation that is focused on families of young children, including the child tax credit that I mentioned and the comprehensive child care legislation that I stood up and talked about on this floor 3 years ago, S51, or 2 years ago, F51 would provide direct support to caregivers of adults who need assistance. Many of us in this room have fulfilled this role, taking care of aging parents, ailing spouses, or adult children who need help. Statewide, much of this responsibility falls on older Vermonters, who are most likely to be struggling financially. This bill would help those Vermonters make ends meet. According to the fiscal note prepared by JFO, S51 would reduce the taxes of approximately 6,300 Vermonters by $6 million, providing each of them with an average tax credit of $952. This is a substantial tax break for Vermonters who need it most, Vermonters who are right now caring for other Vermonters. Mr. President, the list of witnesses that we heard from includes the Executive Director of the Vermont Commission on Women, the sponsor of the bill, me, the AARP, and the Alzheimer's Association. Also, a Middlebury College student who I want to give a shout out to, who also did the research for the findings in the bill. She testified as well. Our Legislative Council, of course, our Joint Fiscal Office, of course, and then, of course, the Tax Department. The vote in committee was 6-0-1, and we definitely ask for your support, Mr. President. This is an important financial relief for Vermonters who really need it. Thank you for your attention.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Finance? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support this bill and to amplify perhaps a little further even those remarks which I thought were excellent presented by the presenter of the bill. Many of the afflictions that affect people of old age, and particularly dementia and Alzheimer's, are diseases that don't just affect the individual who suffers from them. They affect the families of those people, and they affect all of us, because they all have an end result that is increasing debility and ultimately the involvement of public support and public funds. For people who have a disease like Alzheimer's, for example, they depend to an extent on families supporting them in the home to the extent that they can. And ultimately, when that support ends, they wind up in institutions, and institutions are tremendously expensive. We don't have a healthcare system that deals with institutions and with long-term care in the way that we have with Medicare and Medicaid. And ultimately, the person and the family winds up in a situation, by and large, in which they are impoverished, because that's the only point at which institutionalized care gets paid for by our healthcare system. These healthcare suppliers who are members of the family who provide the hands-on healthcare that we're talking about here are heroes. They're not only heroes, they're people who help save us money, because by providing those kind of care to the extent that they can for the period of time that they can, until the person is institutionalized, winds up saving us the money because the cost of institutionalization is astronomical. Astronomical for the family, and when thinking about it, it's astronomical for us. This $1,000 will go a long way to keep some people in their homes longer than they're able to be now, and that ultimately will save all of us money, as well as providing needed medical services. And I recommend strongly to the body to consider approval of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you. May I inquire of the reporter?
The reporter is interrogated.
So I'm just curious, we have a wonderful program, Choices for Care, which also compensates family members and others to help care for people in their own homes. And I'm just curious what the interplay was, if you feel this is clearly a much welcome addition. But I'm just curious, of the 70,000 Vermonters who are engaged in this work, did you discover how many actually were taking advantage of our Choices for Care program? And was the interplay between Choices for Care and this much appreciated tax credit?
Yes, thank you for that question, Mr. President. In fact, the data that our Joint Fiscal Office analysts used to come up with the fiscal impact of this bill was data from the Department of Aging and Independent Living, which was largely data from our Choices for Care program. And so he was able to break down the number of Vermonters that have activities of daily living requirements and their analysis and assessment through the Choices for Care program, and what types of services they get through that program, and how many of them would then be eligible for this. If they don't need up to 20 hours of care as assessed by the Choices for Care program, they wouldn't be, the caregivers wouldn't be eligible for this. They have to provide more than 20 hours for care. If they are paid through Choices for Care, or if their caregiver is paid, or if they're paid through another agency or through Social Security, for example, then they wouldn't be eligible because they are a paid caregiver. So this is specifically for caregivers who provide 20 hours or more of unpaid care, and that would make them eligible for this. So if they get paid for 5 hours through Choices for Care, and the individual they're caring for needs 40 hours of care, that would mean that they are providing 35 hours of unpaid care, and then they could potentially be eligible. But we did look specifically at the interaction for the Choices for Care program in both considering the language in the bill and also the fiscal impact of the bill.
Great, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the interplay and how that might work, because as we know, it's not a 40-hour-a-week job to take care of these people in need, many more hours than that. So it's good to know that there could be an interplay between those two programs. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Finance? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And we have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Finance. The question is now, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of S 51. We now have S 60, an act related to establishing the Farm Security Special Fund to provide grants for farm losses due to weather conditions. It was introduced on February 11th, 2025, and referred to the Committee on Agriculture, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth in the calendar for today on page 239, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the amendment proposed by the Committee on Ag be amended as set forth in the calendar today on page 244, and that when amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S60, an act relating to establishing the Farm Security Special Fund to provide grants for farm losses due to weather conditions.
I recognize the senator from Windsor District, Senator Major, for the report on the Committee of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here to report on a critical piece of legislation for our Vermont farmers, S60. The purpose of S60 is to establish the Farm Security Special Fund and provide financial relief to Vermont farmers affected by severe weather conditions. In recent years, Vermont farmers have faced increasing losses due to unpredictable and extreme weather events, which existing relief programs have failed adequately to cover. The legislation aims to fill that gap by creating a dedicated source of financial assistance for farmers suffering uninsured or uncovered losses due to weather-related disasters. Here are some of the numbers that bear that out. In 2023, Vermont farmers lost $44.7 million. In 2024, it was $13.5 million. Once seen as a safe place to farm in the face of climate change, Vermont now is no longer immune to its impacts. The 2021 Vermont Climate Assessment found an average annual precipitation in Vermont has increased to 7.5 inches per year. Now, let me give you some background and need for the legislation. Vermont's agricultural sector is a cornerstone of its economy and rural communities. However, increasing occurrences of extreme weather events such as flooding, droughts, high winds, hail, and abnormal freezing conditions have significantly impacted farm productivity. Many small-scale and diversified farms, in particular, lack access to comprehensive insurance or federal relief programs, leaving them vulnerable to severe financial distress following weather-related losses. S60 addresses this pressing need by creating a state-administered fund to support affected farmers and sustain Vermont's agricultural resilience. The fund amends 6 VAS Chapter 207 to create a new subchapter entitled the Farm Security Special Fund. Defined key terms including eligible weather conditions and farm eligibility requirements. It establishes the fund under the administration of the Agency for Agriculture to provide grants for farmers facing financial losses due to eligible weather conditions. Grants cover up to 50% of uninsured or uncovered losses with a cap of $150,000 per farm per year. Losses eligible for reimbursement include lost wages, destroyed crops, debt payments, replanting costs, feed replacement costs, equipment repairs, and road repairs. The program requires the Secretary of Agriculture to develop an income-based criteria for applicants and establish a transparent and efficient application process. Applications will be processed within 15 days of receipt. The Secretary of Agriculture will create a review board to evaluate applications and recommend awards to the Secretary. The board will be comprised of representatives from the Agency of Agriculture, the State Chief Recovery Officer, agricultural organizations, and of course, farmers. This will ensure fair and efficient distribution of funds, and it will also conduct annual reviews of the program. The program has allotted $7.5 million from the general fund in fiscal year 2026 to establish and implement the fund. The act takes effect in July 1st of 2025. This legislation is critical to protect Vermont farmers' agricultural industry from increasing weather-related risks. The fund will provide direct relief to farmers facing devastating losses, ensuring that continued operations. It will stabilize Vermont's agricultural economy by mitigating the financial impact of extreme weather events. It will also support food security and rural livelihoods by preventing farm closures due to uninsured losses. It will also enhance resilience and stability in Vermont's farming sector by offering financial certainty in an era of climate uncertainty. Witnesses included our sponsor, Senator Ruth Hardy, the Secretary of Agriculture, Anson Tebbetts, Ward Beckford from UVM Extension, Nicole Dubuque from the Agency of Agriculture, Doug Farnham, the Chief Recovery Officer from the Agency of Administration, Jackie Folsom from the Vermont Agricultural Association, Legislative Council. The Agriculture Committee strongly recommends this passage of S60 with a vote of 5-0-0, and we ask that you support this for the full body. Thank you, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Franklin District, Senator Norris, for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Appropriation took testimony on S60 from the chair and vice chair of Senate Ag in reference to that section of the bill which pertains to monies. And after removing all of the monies, which is quite commonplace in appropriations, we voted on a vote of 7-0-0. We recommend the report of the Committee on Agriculture be amended as follows. First, in Section 2, 6 VSA, Chapter 207, and Subchapter 4, in Section 4632, in Subdivision A1, by striking out the word appropriated, where it appears, and inserting in lieu thereof transferred. Second, by striking out Sections 3, appropriations, and 4, effective date, in their entireties, and inserting in lieu thereof Section 3 to read as follows. Section 3, the effective date. This act shall take effect on July 1st, 2025. And let me repeat that this is a vote of 7-0-0. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, the first question is, shall the recommendation of the amendment of the Committee on Agriculture be amended as proposed by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have approved the amendment proposed by the Committee on Appropriations. The question now is, shall the recommendation of the amendment of the Committee on Agriculture, be amended as proposed by the Committee on Appropriations? That's the one I just did. Shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture as amended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? You're going to make me say that again, Senator Bihovsky.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden.
May I inquire of the presenter of the agriculture report?
The presenter from Agriculture is interrogated.
Pardon my lack of knowledge. I don't have a lot of farming knowledge, but I'm wondering why a farm wouldn't have adequate insurance.
These are tailored, excuse me, Mr. President, these are tailored specifically for smaller or farms or diversified farms, and the cost may be too much for them to have that insurance.
Okay. My other question is, how many times can the same farm access these grants?
Once per year.
Once per year, but they could do it every year if, say, there was a flooding event in 2023 and another flooding event in 2024. At no point would we say, maybe you shouldn't be farming there.
That is correct. But like anything, there is also a situation that I was once in the military, and one of the things that we did, we trained hoping that we never had to use it. And so those times that we don't use it, on the other hand of it, we will not use that fund.
I thank the presenter.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Orleans.
I thank the reporter from the Committee on Agriculture for his wonderful presentation of the bill, and I think he should record audiobooks. I would like to ask him a question, if I may.
The senator from Agriculture is interrogated.
I have a very brief question. Thank you, Mr. President. On section 4634 in your book, section 4, 2 farmers who have received relief funding. Is that relief funding relating to federal relief funding? Because obviously 2 members can't be recommended to a committee that has not given out any relief funding under this bill already. So that relief funding, I imagine, can't be the relief funding coming from this fund. So what relief funding is it referring to? Is it referring to federal funding? Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, what page was that?
Page 243.
Can I take a recess, Mr. President?
We'll take a brief recess.
Fix my question.
Senate, please come to order. You may continue.
I thank the reporter of the bill for our quick conference. Thank you. I thank the reporter. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are you ready for the question? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter from the Agricultural Committee?
The senator is interrogated.
So thank you for the fine report. Mr. President, I'm curious what percentage of Vermont farms have commercial insurance for weather events?
I do not have that, but I can get that. Like I said, larger farms do. Can I defer to the chair of the Agriculture Committee?
The senator from Essex is interrogated as the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we're finding about 80% of the farmers in Vermont have insurance, crop insurance. Also, we're finding out that about 10% of what what they're covered for is getting reimbursed. We've also asked point blank when we were doing this bill, Mr. President, whether this bill would preclude them or would that stop them from obtaining crop insurance. And they said, no, the crop insurance was not anywhere near enough, and that this was just gonna be another avenue for them to help to try to mitigate losses. But crop insurance by themselves did not adequately help them recover their losses. So between this fund and crop insurance, even those funds would not be enough to help them actually recover all their losses. But it would, the purpose of this fund really was to get the funds out the door quicker in case they had to replant or repurchase or fix or of any sort like that, so they could possibly not lose the whole season trying to recover from the catastrophic event.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the chair of the Agricultural Committee. But if I can continue with the reporter of the bill from the Agricultural Committee. There was a comment made during the presentation that this is an income-based eligibility program, and I'm wondering why that limitation was introduced into the bill.
From my thought is that if a farmer has crop insurance, is able to cover his losses, then we did not want to fund anything that the farmer could absolutely cover.
Thank you, Mr. President. And one last question. If you could remind the body what the requested funding was to fund the legislation for the
$7.5 million.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank the reporter of the bill.
Thank you.
Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to remind the body that part of the purpose of this bill is to help make our farms, which provide food for our food system, more resilient to climate change. This is literally a card that we should be playing to make sure that our farms can withstand the flooding, the freezing, and the high winds that we've seen over the last several years in order to maintain our food systems and feed Vermonters. Many of us remember a couple years ago in 2023 when we had that frost in May that froze nearly all the orchards across the state. I tried to go cherry picking and apple picking with my family that year, and there were no fruit, literally no fruit on the trees that year because of the freeze that happened right when blossoms were blooming. And then, of course, the flooding from the last 2 years it was devastating to farms, particularly smaller farms that grow diversified vegetable crops. I think everybody remembers those aerial photos of the Intervale in Burlington, and that was just completely flooded, 100% loss. Those small farmers don't have access to the types of financial resources that some of our larger farms do, either because they can't afford it or because they don't qualify for it. Crop insurance will only cover so much, and just like with homeowners insurance, it won't cover all the flooding losses that in particular. So this bill is an important stopgap, and of course it's not going to cover all of their losses, but it's something to help them get restarted. And as the senator from Essex said, help them to replant and restart their farming operations. Just to answer one of the questions from the senator from Rutland, if you look on page 241, paragraph 2, under 4633, the secretary shall establish criteria for the amount of an award based on the annual net income of the farm in relation to the median net income of all farms in Vermont. So it's sort of a ratio that tries to capture the size of a farm and the ratio of the size of the award. So it's not necessarily saying that you have to meet a certain income threshold in order to qualify, but that the awards will be proportional to the incomes of the farms. The question from the senator from Orleans, sorry, it used to be Essex and Orleans was combined. So the question about the farms that had received funds before, The BGAP program, which is the Business Assistance Program for flooding for the past 2 years, included a small slice for farmers. I believe it was $2.8 million in the past year. And so there are farms in the state who did receive some small amount of funding through the BGAP program. So those are people who could serve on this board. Thank you, Mr. President.
And just a bit picayune, but I would remind the senators that we are the Senate and the House is the body. The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture as amended? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have amended as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture as amended. S60. Okay. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of S60. We now have S109, an act related to miscellaneous judiciary procedures. It was introduced on March 11th, 2025, and it was referred to the Committee on Judiciary, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as it appears on page 270 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Listen to the second reading of the bill.
S109, an act relating to miscellaneous judiciary procedures.
I recognize the senator from Chittenden North District, Senator Matos, for the report of the Committee on Judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am aware I am standing between us and lunch, so I will hit the highlights here on S109. It's the annual miscellaneous judiciary bill. A lot of technical corrections, minor changes. Section 1 starts off with adult court diversion. We're just making it clear that it's available in all counties and that we're going to change referring to these folks as clients to persons referred to the program. Section 2 is just changing our statute for the number of superior court judges. We define that number in statute now. We're changing that to just be the legislature sets the amount of judges. So each time we change the amount, we don't have to go back and change the statute. Sections 3 through 5 are in relation to under 21 tobacco possession. It makes it clear that 7 VSA 1005 prohibits both the possession and procurement of tobacco products by persons under 21. Section 4 makes it clear that the Judicial Bureau complaint can only be voided by a law enforcement officer, and if doing so would not be prohibited by any other law. Section 5 just is a clarifying change that using a fake ID is a civil offense, it's not criminal. Section 6 is in relation to remote court records access. And right now, attorneys can go into the court system remotely if they are contracted with the state, whereas private attorneys cannot do that. They have to physically go to the court, sit at the terminal, get into the system. This would change it to allow attorneys to be able to access those records remotely, saving on the time to go into the courthouse and being able to use that system. Section 7 clears up some inconsistencies between court rule and statute related to attorney's fees. Currently, it's the 2% rule, where if the judgment awarded is less than 2% of the attorney's fees, or let me rephrase that. If your attorney's fees are less than 2% of the judgment awarded, you don't have to go to a hearing, but there is one instance where if it's related to foreclosure, you do have to go to a hearing regardless. We're just changing that to make it simpler across the board where the 2% rule comes into effect. Sections 8 and 9 is related to 13 VSA 4013. That's zip guns and switchblade knives. Currently, it's illegal to possess either a switchblade or a zip gun. This change will strike out switchblades and just make it illegal to possess or sell a zip gun. We heard from witnesses that there is no definition of a switchblade. There may be unknowingly people walking around selling switchblade knives. These are typically a knife that can automatically open, around 3 inches long, and this would make that not illegal to possess or sell that type of knife, commonly referred to as like a utility knife that you can open with one hand. And then section 9 would automatically expunge those records. And we had some information that came in since 2017. There was 12 convictions of this section. Couldn't determine if it was a zip gun or a switchblade knife. And these would all be expunged automatically, kind of like that of marijuana when we got rid of that crime. Section 10 is related to victims of a crime and victims' compensation. It makes it clear that if you're an intervener in a crime, you have to prove that you had physical harm to be able to receive compensation. Right now, it states mental or physical harm. We're stating now that you have to get physical harm to be able to receive compensation for that. Section 11, clearly technical, just unnecessary subsection heading. Section 12, it's in relation to serving orders against stalking to be the same as how we do that for abuse orders. So if you have somebody in the court and they're standing right there in the courthouse, you can physically serve that or mail it to them, any of those orders. Section 13, again, purely technical. It just corrects an inaccurate cross-reference. Section 14 is guardianship. It just makes this, if it's a result of a denial or the petition is withdrawn before the final hearing, that those records are sealed. So the guardianship remains sealed, confidential. It was inconsistent in current law. Section 15, it's updating the optional form for power of attorney. There's one section that's said twice, and actually on my notes, I wrote it twice, ironically enough. Section 16, again, technical. We deleted the word under before section, so it's just for reading simplicity. Section 17, another technical, inaccurate cross-reference. Section 18, it was pre-charge diversion. It was Act 180 that we passed. And just to be consistent with the act, we're adding the ability to have pre-charge diversion into the list of which state's attorneys can use instead of filing a charge in juvenile proceeding. So just putting on a list of different things that they can use. Section 19 is property title. And right now, if you have a land record that hasn't been disputed for 15 years, it's deemed valid. And during COVID, we found a lot of power of attorneys were being used for real estate transactions. So we were adding in some language where if there was a transaction done, land record filed with the town, and the power of attorney was not recorded, and it wasn't to be legally challenged for 15 years, that power of attorney would be deemed valid, or that record would be deemed valid, even though the power of attorney wasn't recorded. Because like when you sign a document with a power of attorney, it would be the attorney writing, or whoever the power of attorney is writing for whoever the document is for. It's just clarifying to line that up with how property title works currently in statute. Section 20, we're just changing the title of chief superior judge in the statute, because right now it's chief administrative judge, so we're just updating. No, right now it's chief administrative judge. We're changing it to chief superior judge. Section 21, it repeals a report that is no longer necessary. This is in relation to the forensic facility report. Forensic facility was never built, so we don't have a report on that facility. Section 22, again, we're going to repeal the Coordinated Justice Reform Advisory Council. The chair and vice chair came to our committee and said, you know, we're not really needed anymore. We have no further recommendations. This was originally supposed to sunset 2028. They said, why don't you sunset it earlier? So we put that in here to be sunsetted. Sections 23 and 24, again, repealing the statutes that are scheduled to take effect on July 1, 2025. And this is in relationship to public inebriation. So currently, if you're taken into custody for public inebriation, you will go to the Department of Corrections. The statute that we're repealing would have made it so that doesn't happen as of July 1, 2025. DOC said that, hey, we can still do this. You can still bring folks that are incarcerated for public inebriation. So we're repealing these two statutes in sections 23 and 24, just to be in line and consistent with what DOC can handle. Sections 25, that was a firearms surrender order compliance working group. And really this is to develop a uniform procedure across the state to ensure that compliance with the court orders to surrender firearms are done consistently. Right now there is no procedure, so we would like to form a working group from a vast array of I don't know the word I'm looking for. Stakeholders, thank you. Stakeholders, and you can find that on page 280 of today's calendar. And the last but not least section is section 26, and that's the effective dates. Everything takes effect January 1, 2025. Besides section 1, it takes effect on July 2nd, 2025, because we can't make a change to something that is not yet enacted anyway. So section 1 takes effect on July 2nd, 2025. And we heard from the courts, the Vermont Bankers Association, Office of the Legislative Counsel, the Vermont Bar Association, Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, and CATIC for what that stands for. And on a 5-0 vote, we ask for the Senate's support of this bill.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Judiciary? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Addison?
Thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire of the reporter of the bill?
The reporter is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sections 23 and 24, it was unclear to me the reason for this repeal. Why in 2019? I don't remember. I believe it was both of our first session here. Why we prohibited public inebriates from being incarcerated in Department of Corrections to begin with, and then why are we repealing it?
So why did we do it in the first place?
Why did we do it in the first place, and what has changed over the past 6 years?
Well, it's been delayed several times over the past few years, and then rather delayed again. Repeal those statutes, and as a result, DOC will continue to be able to incarcerate those public inebriates when necessary, as they do now. I can't speak to 2019 and how we got from there to here, but it's been consistently pushed off, sunsetted, not sunsetted, but pushed off each year.
So every year, so we have been over the last 6 years incarcerating inebriates which I think means people who are intoxicated, in Department of Corrections facilities. We have been doing that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just, if you're able to find out what the intent was in 2019 about why we prohibited it to begin with, that would be helpful if you could find that out before third reading.
Be happy to.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Wyndham.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter of the bill?
Reporter is interrogated.
Thank you. On section 25, on page 280, paragraph A, on the 5th line, under the working group description, it includes the statement, support entities charged with storing surrendered firearms. And I'm asking this question because there's a nonprofit entity in my district that is involved in helping folks voluntarily donate firearms. It's Swords to Plowshares. And there's been a lot of, the biggest challenge they have is finding a place and an entity who will receive those firearms and be able to legally either dispose of them or melt them down, basically. So could this be interpreted that surrendered firearms would be firearms that would be voluntarily surrendered?
Well, this would be in the instance of, I would think domestic abuse orders, where you'd be surrendering your firearms. Law enforcement would come in, retrieve those firearms, and then keep them at their facilities, safekeeping. What this bill kind of gets at is bringing in FFLs, federal firearms licensees, to be able to be a part of the conversation and see where they can be of assistance to the entire process, where if you have a local FFL in the area that can be able to safely store these firearms in the event that it's nearby.
Yeah, so, Mr. President, in our area, the FFL isn't able to do this. So if I could just come up with a friendly amendment to make sure that that group is included, because I think that is consistent with the intent of this bill to manage, dispose firearms in a safe and legal way.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that in these instances of firearm surrender, that they're given back to the individual following the proceedings.
Yeah.
Not in the case where they're gonna be destroyed.
Yeah, so what I'm asking is a different situation. There's currently an organization that holds events and encourages folks to dispose or to give away firearms that they don't need. These might be firearms that they received from a parent or a person who passed away, or firearms that they find. And it's very difficult to actually give those firearms away because there isn't a place for them to be stored. So if this bill could include receiving those types of firearms, it would be very helpful.
Yeah, we'd be happy to talk offline more about the issues that you have in your area. If my chair has anything further to add, I'd be happy to heal that. I yield to the member from Windsor.
Thank you.
Senator from Wyndham.
Thank you. So just I'm happy to look at any amendment. I would note that this is a working group that would look at how to support any entity that is charged with storing a surrendered firearm. And lower in paragraph B, it refers to any stakeholders deemed necessary by the Attorney General, and then goes on to list the folks who are required to be in this working group. So it's certainly something that could be discussed and looked at by the working group. If there's language that the Senator from Wyndham would like to introduce, happy to take a look at it.
Thank you,
Senator from Wyndham. All right, you all set? Senator
Yes.
from Windsor.
Thank you. May I interrogate the reporter of the bill, please?
The reporter is interrogated.
Thank you, Mr. President. In section 8, I'm clear on the switchblade, but man, I have no idea what a zip gun is. Sorry.
Is that a question?
Yeah, he went on at great length about a switchblade, which I appreciated, but I met, and several others of us in art section of the gallery don't know what a zip gun is, and we would love to know.
I don't believe that's defined in law, and it will not be changed with this bill either. It would stay in law as being illegal to possess or sell.
The question, if I may, is what is a zip gun?
And it's not defined in law, but from what I understand, it could be a homemade device that has a retractable device on said device that can then make the gun fire.
So
it can be a piece of wood with a rubber band, being able to sling it forward. Again, not being changed in this bill
And not
whatsoever.
defined in the statute anywhere? If we use terms, it's, thank you. It's been concerned.
Are you ready for the question? The question is, shall the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Judiciary? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you have amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Judiciary. Question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of S 109. That completes the orders of the day. Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I make my adjournment motion, I just want to remind senators that tomorrow we have a joint assembly at 10:30. So I'll be making the motion for us to meet at 10. We will meet here, do some business between 10 and 10:25 or so. Then we'll go to the joint assembly. We'll return here to continue our work after that joint assembly. So with that said, Mr. President, I would move that pending announcements, we adjourn until 10 a.m. Thursday, March 20th. And if I might lead off the announcements. The other thing I would remind everyone is that tomorrow is up for action Proposition 3, our constitutional amendment on the right to collectively bargain. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that that will be happening. It's the second stage in our movement of that important piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any announcements? Senator from Washington. The senior senator from Washington.
That's me. Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet, I'm not sure when. Last night, we found witnesses until 2, but we have a lot of witnesses, so grab your lunch and stop by the committee because we're going to be here a long time
Maybe
today.
plan on grabbing your supper at the same time. Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Appropriations will meet 10 to 15 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Are there any other announcements? Senator from Bennington.
President, Senate Education Committee will meet at 1:45.
Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Government Operations will also meet at 1:45.
Senator from Wyndham.
Senate institutions will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you. I would first like to applaud our freshling senators who reported today for the first time on the floor. We have a tradition which we seem to have abandoned. So well done, the three of you. You did a great job and congratulations. some of us didn't get such an easy experience when we first reported our bills. Just saying. Tonight, we have a terrific Farmers Night. We're extending your celebration of St. Patrick's Day, and we are having the terrific band one more time of Irish. They play traditional Irish music, and there is a relation of a member of the House. Connor Casey's, Representative Connor Casey's brother leads this band. And so I encourage you all to come and give yourselves an hour of total pleasure.
Are there any other announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden has moved that we adjourn until 10 o'clock a.m. Thursday, March 20th. Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we have adjourned till 10 o'clock a.m. Thursday, March 20th.